If you're walking down the right path and you're willing to keep walking, eventually you'll make progress. Outgoing President of the United States of America, Barack Obama. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Nice to have you on board as usual. I promised you last week that I would have a surprise for you. And the surprise is we have a live audience tonight along with our fellow journalist who would be posing questions to our panelists this evening. Friday was an eventful day for the world. The inauguration of US President Donald J. Trump. Let's take a listen to some of the remarks made by the President of the United States and get back with the show.
Today, we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C. and giving it back to you, the people. January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again. The crime and the gangs and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and robbed our country of so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. We've made other countries rich, while the wealth, strength, and confidence of our country has dissipated over the horizon. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. We will get our people off of welfare and back to work, rebuilding our country with American hands and American labor. We will follow two simple rules: buy American and hire American. We will reinforce old alliances and form new ones and unite the civilized world against radical Islamic terrorism, which we will eradicate completely from the face of the earth. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. A new national pride will stir our souls, lift our sights, and heal our division. Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
A man who is quite focused on America itself. He is concerned about the country. How is this going to affect the subcontinent, Asia, as well as Sri Lanka? Our topic of discussion today revolves around something very simple: foreign policy. Foreign policy, shifts in world politics, a Trump presidency, and steering Sri Lanka forward. We have three eminent personalities in the studios this evening as well. Let me introduce them to you very quickly. Joining us this evening for the second time on the show is Dr. Harinder Vidanage, Director, Bandaranaike Center for International Studies. We met you just after Donald J. Trump was elected as the president, and here we are today, right after the inauguration, meeting you again, Dr. Vidanage. Nice to have you on board as well.
Thank you, Shami.
Joining us this evening is Dr. Harsha De Silva, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, no stranger to the show. I would like to also introduce Dr. De Silva as the host of the longest running business talk show once, which was hosted by me as well, Newsfirst in Focus. Nice to have you on board. This time around, posing the questions, no, answering the questions. Also joining us this evening is M. Zuhail, the former ambassador to Sri Lanka in Kuwait. Nice to have you on board for the first time, Mr. Zuhail.
Yeah, the first time.
Looking forward for it?
Yeah.
So let's start off tonight's show with Dr. Harsha De Silva, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the government of Sri Lanka. Doctor, interestingly, right after the 8th of November polls last year, we saw President Maithripala Sirisena congratulating Donald J. Trump and saying, Sri Lanka needs some leeway. Leave us alone. Let's now see how we can work together. Are you all worried about a Trump presidency? Are you happy that it's not Hillary Clinton? The time starts now.
Well, I don't think that's actually true. I don't think the president wrote such a long letter and said the things the media is speculating he said. In fact, Vice President Pence called President Sirisena and said that they would like to, I guess, discuss issues with the president. He sent out a congratulatory note like every other head of state would have sent President-elect Trump. We're not concerned as to who is elected to the executive leadership of nations, as there is nothing we can do to get various people of our choice elected to various positions around the world. We have to be able to work with whoever is elected.
Dr. Silva, are you trying to say that the president did not request President-elect Donald J. Trump about human rights? Do you want me to read it for you?
No, you have the letter?
Not the letter. President Maithripala Sirisena is saying that he requested Donald J. Trump to drop charges against Sri Lanka. Do you want me to read the excerpts? So,
no, who's saying this?
That's the president saying this.
Or the media is speculating the president said?
Media does speculate, but yeah, this is what the president is saying. That's my point.
I have not. I've spoken to the president on this matter, but you know, I think what he wrote. I have not seen the letter. I think what he did say is something broad in general, that Sri Lanka would, you know, sort of is looking forward to working with the new president of the United States. I think it's a lot of spin, all these stories, because now I've come to believe that half what I read in the newspapers actually never took place. So, you know.
However, addressing a crowd just after the presidential election in the United States, President Maithripala Sirisena said that he requested President-elect Donald J. Trump to drop charges against Sri Lanka and look at human rights afresh, accountability afresh.
No, there are no. I mean, the United States hasn't brought any charges against Sri Lanka. What we have is a resolution that Sri Lanka is co-sponsored with a whole bunch of other nations. So that means we would have charged ourselves if that is true. So that statement itself is an inaccurate one. So we are working with the international community together on this. We've given some undertakings to the international community, particularly the UN Human Rights Commission, and we are progressing. In fact, when Prime Minister met Prince Hussein in Davos this week, or last week, he was quite upbeat about the progress we have made in human rights in the last 1.5 years. So it's progress.
Are you happy that Senator Hillary Clinton is not the President of the United States of America?
I mean, we never took up a position as a nation. I mean, certain individual politicians did express their own views. Like I said, you know, we have no choice on the matter. Whoever is...
I'm posing this question to you in particular, Dr. Harsha De Silva, because we saw a team of your government, representing your government, went to the United Kingdom to campaign for a referendum that was none of our business.
Well, that was not to elect a particular person as the leader of the UK. I was there.
The deciding factor.
No, I was there, so I can tell you what we did.
And that is why I'm posing this question to you.
Yeah,
Doctor.
I mean, we met with the Sri Lankan community, and we try to explain to them that 40% of our exports to the European single market goes to the UK, and at the time we were working towards getting GSP Plus back, which we believe we will have in the next 8 weeks or so. And for the Sri Lankan exporter, it would have been better if UK was part of the single market. And that was all what we explained to these people. So that's also a lot of media speculation, all kinds of spin. As a person who was there, I will tell you, I can tell whoever is watching that it was that is what we did. We explained to people of Sri Lanka, or rather, people of Sri Lankan origin, that it would be better if, in terms of our exporters, that's all.
And David Cameron lost. How did you take it then?
Look, I mean, David Cameron, it was not an election that David Cameron was running for to be elected. It was a referendum whether the UK should stay or go.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harsha De Silva, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, joining us this evening on the show. Let's now focus our attention to Dr. Harinda Vidanage, Director of the Bandaranaike Center for International Studies. Dr. Vidanage, it finally happened. 20th of January, you had the 45th President of the United States of America taking oaths. Where do you see world politics moving?
Well, as far as I can see from just for the few days that he's been in power, I think the shift is in what we call global governance, right? Because not international cooperation, right? How the US deals with countries, makes relationships, that's not the issue. I think where the concern is, where the challenge is, where would global governance be? When I say global governance, it basically means how does the world hang together? And the US has been kind of playing the role of the epicenter, or playing the key role in making sure that global governance functions. When I say global governance, again, things like human rights, free trade, climate change, disarmament, all these things. So because though we think most of the things are run on, most of the world affairs are run on international law, most of them actually run on international norms. So when you have a very radical shift from the key player that kind of holds things together, that's a challenge. So as far as I can see, if someone is to be concerned or feel challenged to kind of looking ahead, it's how do you deal with global governance in the future. That's my short answer to that. Yeah.
US President Donald J. Trump is very concerned about the United States of America. I recollect in 1988 when he was talking to Oprah Winfrey, he said, "I am only concerned about the United States of America. I am not concerned about Japan. I'm not concerned about China. I am only concerned about the United States of America." And this is the same vision that President Donald J. Trump is following even now. Do you think this is of concern for the entire world, the subcontinent, Asia as a whole, Dr. Vidanage?
Well, yes. Again, as I said, with regard to, I mean, if I revert back to what he said about that I only care about the U.S. Well, but sadly, a lot of people don't realize even the United States' best interests are always, kind of can be guaranteed with the better relations with the world, right? Its national interest, its prosperity, its security is very much, whether you like it or not, depends on how it deals with the rest of the world as well. Of course, you have serious domestic issues that the current president has to fix, and he came on a real mandate. People really believed, the people who voted for him really believed that things had to be fixed because there were very serious issues. But looking at the subcontinent, of course, how the U.S. relationship builds with countries like China, Australia, India, Indonesia will be very critical. Pakistan will be very critical in understanding how it will affect the subcontinent.
Dr. Vidanage, Donald J. Trump made a very significant remark just prior to the US presidential poll, prior to the 8th of November polls. He said that if I am elected president, I would prosecute Hillary Clinton. Do you see any similarity with what Donald J. Trump said then and what this government said prior to the elections here in Sri Lanka? Do you see any similarity? Do you think that it will really happen?
I don't think I want to be dragged into that conversation. I didn't come here to talk about that. If you asked me a question about the US,
do you think he will do it? Okay, let me rephrase my question to you. Do you think that Donald J. Trump would take action against Hillary Clinton?
I think he has bigger problems at home, within the White House, to fix first. Because he has a three-headed leadership within the White House. He has to fix. His cabinet has still not been appointed. He has to deal with. I think he has a lot of domestic, local and global problems to deal with than prosecuting Hillary Clinton. So I don't think that's his problem at all, or
not his priority right now.
Not his priority at all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harinder Vidanage, Director of BCIS, Bandaranaike Center for International Studies. Before I move to Ambassador Zuhail, I want to remind our viewers and probably remind Dr. Harsha De Silva, on the 26th of November, the President Maithripala Sirisena, addressing a group of SLFP members, said, I sent a special message to Donald J. Trump asking him to support us at the Council. The President said, and I quote, I am asking him to help completely clear my country and allow us to start afresh. Before moving to Ambassador Zuhail, Dr. De Silva, the President did say it on the 26th of November 2016.
I mean, like I said, I never saw what he wrote, and he never told us that he said that. The press had speculated, apparently,
and
according to what I know. But if he said that, he said that. I mean, there's nothing wrong in saying that. If he wants, I mean, we need support from everybody. But let me reiterate the fact: there is no resolution brought against Sri Lanka. We are not asking anybody to clear us. That is gone. We have a resolution that has been co-sponsored in Geneva, and Sri Lanka is a signatory to that. So it is, contradictory. If on the one hand we say we have a co-sponsored resolution.
You said that media speculated, so that's why I thought I
was No. What I'm saying is, I mean, let us be honest, right? We have a co-sponsored resolution, right? And then, if we are going to say, remove us from this, that's contradictory to the status quo. So that's my point.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harsha De Silva. However, the President did say it on the 26th of November that I am asking him to completely clear my country and allow us to start afresh. President Maithripala Sirisena. Right then, Ambassador M. Zuhail, the former ambassador to Sri Lanka in Kuwait. Ambassador, do you think that the Muslim world, the Middle East, should be worried now? You have a president who wants to eradicate radical Islamism, who wants to move forward, who wants to defeat ISIS. What does it really mean? Do you think he is venturing into uncharted territory right now? Or is he not serious about all this? The time starts now.
If he wants to eradicate ISIS, the Muslim world, the Arab world, all will be very happy. The ISIS is a terrorist organization. It's not Islamic, it's not Muslim. Apart from that, Muslim world, Arab world especially, Muslim world, when you say there are 59 countries, OIC members are 59 countries, 20% of the world are Muslims. And I don't think, though Donald Trump had been making statements prior to the elections, that he will be making various comments about Muslims and terrorism and things like that. He will want to enterprise the Muslim world, Arab world especially. You see, Arab countries...
You mean to say he won't?
He will not.
He will not.
I think that's what as it is, he had not announced after he became president, he had not announced his foreign policy as such properly. We are all talking of what he had been talking in the coming up to the elections. So the Muslim world, but to answer your question, whether they will be worried, because substantial amount of investment in America is from the Arab world. If you take Saudi Arabia alone, has about 116 billion US dollars on their in investment in American treasury funds and things like that. So if he is going to antagonize them, and if they withdraw, and as it is, Donald Trump's foreign policy as it is mentioned, he is local, domestic centered. Foreign policy, he is just trying to leave away the foreign policy of the rest of the world to be out of the grip of the Americans, as it was for the for the past 40 years or so. They are not going to be regime changing, and they are not going to be policemen of the world, and so on. So if that is the case, he is not going to be bothered about all these other countries. Other countries will run on their own. That is what it is. So I don't think there are going to be major change with regard to the Middle Eastern policy.
President Trump had said that he would be meeting the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu the first week of February.
Yeah.
How do you think then the Muslim world is going to perceive this?
And not only he has said that, he has said also that he is going to shift their, support them to shift their capital to Jerusalem, which again, it was a Congress decision about 15-20 years back. But none of the presidents, Bush, Clinton and Obama, didn't support that. They didn't want to, because they would upset the whole Middle Eastern countries there. That I don't know whether he wants to push that and create problem for himself. He is going to be concentrating on the domestic affairs, trying to leave out away from the international politics, you see. So, but he is meeting Netanyahu, that's fine. I mean, Netanyahu also wants to meet him, I think, because they are trying to get benefits out of this man. But if you look at his foreign policy statement so far, that he wants to be away from all the international involvements with foreign countries. So why is he want to pick only Israel? Then he's going to create problem for the Middle Eastern countries and create problem for himself.
Well, prior to the election, Donald Trump said that he wants a ban on Muslims visiting the United States of America. Is this practical? Can he do it?
Well, immigration policies nowhere in the world has ethnic-based immigration. I mean, you say one set of people can come, other set of people can't come. This is the first time they are going to try it. But I don't know how practical it is going to be. And when you say Muslims, 1.7 billion people, you see, thousands want to go to America. But terrorists are maybe only 0.11% of the Muslim world, unfortunately. So is he going
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, only that much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Zuhail. We'll get back to you in a moment. Let's open the floor for questions from our journalists. On to my right is Nadim Majid, as always. On to my immediate left is attorney at law Sonali Wanigebazuke. Nice to have you on board, Sonali, as always. And on to my far left is Chatuang Haporachi. Let's open the floor. Let's start off with Sonali.
Thanks, Shyam. My first question is to Dr. Vidanage. Trump, when talking about foreign policy, has said, and I quote, "We will seek friendship and goodwill with the nations of the world, but we do so with the understanding that it is the right of all nations to put their own interests first. We do not seek to impose our way of life on anyone, but rather to let it shine as an example for everyone to follow." Now, this is in contrast to the way America and the United States operated for the past, the foreseeable future, the past. So, when we think of the past, many are the instances where democracy and human rights, there were so many double standards. How do you see this progress in terms of Donald Trump's statement? Do you think America will actually be America only and America first and non-interventionist in its approach towards other countries?
Well, his statement he said about eradicating Islamic terrorism itself makes it interventionist. I mean, how can you because the idea of, I mean, there is no, the biggest threat to the US is not on, it's not homegrown, it comes from our external, location. So I don't think, as I said earlier, the US cannot be isolationist. It can be. I mean, you could. This is not the time it can be isolationist. It could have been before World War I or anything, but I don't think it has the potential. And also, the last line you mentioned, quoted from Trump, saying, "Let them look at us." That's what we call pure American conservatism, which is American conservative foreign policy, and conservative politics, which basically meant we are the role model. The only difference between, though the problem is last 30-40 years, that was not applied because we had the two parties were either democratic or neoconservatism, like Reagan to Bush. The neocons wanted that to be imposed on other countries. So American conservatives always saw America as the beacon on the hill. So of course, the only thing that happened with Reagan, after Reagan, mainly with the Bush administrations, was that the US went to the rest of the world, tried to impose that. What Trump is trying to say in simple terms is, we have been embroiled in too many global issues, which kind of ties with his own electoral pledge, which is saying we are going to look at the US. American people have been left behind because the US was too globally involved. Right. So what I'm trying to say is, though he says that, it's nearly impossible for the US to be isolationist. And he's not saying the US will be isolationist. He's saying America first. That means the world at least comes second, right? So it's not as if America is going to get out of the world, but it's just trying to say we are refocusing. So coming back to your second part of the question about human rights, double standards, of course that ties into my first answer I gave to Mr. Asuluddin, the idea that what the US will distance itself to a certain extent would be being heavily involved in global governance, trying to fund UN agencies, fund the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, things like that. Right, so obviously, indirectly, that it is going to have an effect on the way the global human rights system functions, because it won't have American heavyweight if it goes like this. But the problem then is, can the US totally withdraw from that position?
Thank you, Dr. De Silva. In the past, many other instances when sovereignty of nations was not respected by the United States of America. Given Trump's statement, this is a paradigm shift. Do you think this is, do you think this is what we'll be seeing in the future as well? What's your take on this as the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs?
No, I agree. What Trump is saying is that they've been the world's policeman for so long. And he's a mercantilist, if you really look at it. This is what, he said since the 80s, he's been saying this, Why are we spending to protect Japan, Why can't the European countries pay for NATO's, because America pays, I think, about 70% of its cost. Why is it that we have to look after people all over the place, right? And he's saying, by doing all this, they've been spending trillions and trillions, he says, in wars all over the world, that the successive governments in the US had forgotten the American people. And he's also saying, by looking after these other countries, they have gotten powerful both economically and politically, and taken away the jobs from the United States, and now lending to the United States, and the United States now has to pay interest to these guys. And so therefore he says, look, let us refocus, let us put America first. That is what he's saying.
You made a very interesting statement there. You said that Trump was a mercantilist. He's a mercantilist who opposes trade.
See, this is the thing. Who are mercantilists? Mercantilists are people who want to export, but not import. So when you say isolationism, if you look at it from sort of the global...
But see, one of what as an economist yourself, I'm sure that you would also know this, that one of the key things about the Trans-Pacific Partnership is that even for the United States, it gives an opportunity to expand its export market. The reason that I ask this question is I want to bring this to Sri Lanka. Now, one of the key promises that the government has made is to create 1 million job opportunities in Sri Lanka. And I'm guessing that trade policy is going to be a big part of that. So when you're talking about trade policy, we're looking at things like ETCA with free trade agreements with China, with Singapore. And I'm sure many prominent economists, including the chairman of IPS, have suggested that Sri Lanka should explore the possibility of getting onto the TPP. And at the same time, I'm sure that the government already has or is making some exploratory moves in that direction. So my question is, the President of the United States, one of the first actions that he has taken is to withdraw from the TPP. Where does that leave Sri Lanka's trade possibilities when one of our biggest markets is withdrawing from that agreement?
No. I think you kind of got the wrong end of the stick. See, mercantilism is what failed in the 16th century. I mean, you know, what they did was, you know, why did people colonize other countries? You know, whether it is the Portuguese, the Dutch, the French, the British East India Company. You know, they were dealing with exploiting the countries that they colonized. What they did was to take resources from the colonies, bring it back to their countries, and feed their people.
And export.
Yeah.
But in the current context.
But then it was not about exports. It was export, but put barriers to imports. That is what it is. That is what it was. And that is why it failed. And that's why we have so much inflation, because those days it was gold that got shipped in big ships back to the UK and so on. So Trump is a modern day mercantilist, if you ask me. He is saying, I want to export, but I don't want to import. Right? He says, I will put 45% duty on Chinese imports.
So your prediction is that that system will fail and that the US will be facing major inflation crises in the future?
Now, I don't think that this model can work, not in today's context. I mean,
which brings me to the question about Sri Lanka.
I'll come to a TPP question. I'll come to a TPP. I mean, somebody asked Trump, now, if you put 45% duty on Chinese imports into Walmart, I mean, where did he get the votes from? All the Midwestern states, the Rust Belt, you know, Illinois, Michigan, Texas. And these people were anyway not doing all that well, as opposed to those in New York and California and other places. And that is where Walmarts really became big. You know, those hypermarts, people go and buy cheap stuff. And if you put 45% duties, and most of it, if not all of it, in Walmarts come from either Mexico or China or India, Bangladesh, places like that. He said, I saw a lady buy $5. Why should she buy $5? She can buy $2. Right? That's the answer. You know, that doesn't mean that jobs will come back to America. It is like trying to bring agriculture jobs back to America. Will agriculture jobs come back to America? No. It will never come back to America.
So you mean to say that President Donald Trump's policies will not work in the United States?
I doubt it. I doubt it because I believe in markets. I believe in trade.
But now they come back to Sri Lanka.
Yeah, so
Sri Lanka's prospects in terms of trade.
Yeah, TPP, he's threatening to sign the first executive order in the next 20 minutes or something like that. Perhaps before the show is over, he'll sign it. But for Sri Lanka, we had already calculated that because we knew that if by any chance Mr. Trump won, that TPP was out. Right? And in any case, if TPP happened, we would have been at a disadvantage because Vietnam would have gotten most bulk of the advantage, right? The 11 countries. It is because they were willing to do the reforms. necessary to get on TPP. And anyway, TPP was regulation heavy. It had multiple constraints on environment, on various other issues, intellectual property, and so on.
Dr. Silva, you make a lot of sense here, but my question to you is very simple. I want to know, why was it that then the Minister of International Trade goes and lobbies and spends money on a lobby group to get into the TPP? Why was that? You're right, your thinking is okay. You say that if Donald J. Trump is elected, then TPP is going to be scrapped. Understood. 20.5 million rupees of public money was spent on a project like
Yeah,
this.
because I'll be quite honest with you, at that time, no one thought Trump was going to win.
But you just said it.
No. At that time, right, you're referring to Minister Malik's, attempts to try and see how, it was a study, if I'm not mistaken, it was a study.
Million?
I mean, big consulting companies charge lots of money, in DC. But it was, I think, to see how we can get on the bandwagon. Even I said some time back that we should, and I still believe that if TPP is around, we should get on TPP. But now the fact is, TPP won't be around. So now it is a very interesting dynamic.
I don't understand what you're trying to say. You said that if the TPP was in, then Vietnam would come into play, and then Sri Lanka is not going to be at the receiving end. Am I right?
No. Because Vietnam was ahead of us,
right.
They anyway signed TPP. Their parliament ratified TPP,
right.
And if TPP came into being, Vietnam would have definitely benefited in a big way. But we should have got onto TPP.
Then why do we go and spend money on a lobby group?
Why? We have to, if TPP happened, we should have got on TPP, because that would have been the largest trade agreement, right? But now TPP is not going to happen. So there's no point in wasting any more money on that and trying to figure out what else we can do. And there are a lot more exciting things that Sri Lanka can do.
With Dr.
The US,
Vidanage,
Yes.
Dr. Vidanage, looking at this from outside once again, now there seems to be a good friendship between Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, and new president of the United States. Now, with all this happening, the waters in our region, the Asian region, with China, Russia and India, these nuclear superpowers seem a bit unclear as to what is going on. Do you think small countries like Sri Lanka, who are in the cradle of all these big countries, do we have to worry?
Well, we would have to be concerned if Donald Trump's administration starts some kind of a trade war, kind of a, in a way try to have, they call it a trade war, if he starts it up. But I think to answer that question, I think I can link with the minister's answer. I think the point, we have to take the point of mercantilism very seriously, because that's the deal here. That's what he's thinking. That's how he's looking at the world. Because a lot of people forget, as he said, Adam Smith became the father of modern economics by writing Wealth of Nations, which actually was a critique of mercantilism. And that's where we brought free trade, and the US is seen as the champion of free trade. And then when the system the US created after the Second World War, the free trade system it was anchoring, was failing. World Trade Organization was failing, all these things. They introduced TPP, TTIP and TISA, right? That was kind of trying to, in a way, to write the new rules of trade. So, in that context, so what we are seeing is how the US is kind of being, I mean, in a way, its power is kind of waning to a certain extent. And now, with Trump, President Trump in power, if the US is losing its hold in Asia Pacific, right now the TTP, they are withdrawing from TPP, because the TPP did not have China or India, right? It excluded both these powers. It was very clear it was America's geopolitics at play, not just economics. It was a geo-economic strategy towards achieving a larger geopolitical goal. So that means the Asia Pacific region is more prone to instability, because there would be, I mean, there is already a Sino-Indian rivalry, but if they go ahead like this, there can be more kind of, if the tensions that develop between India, China, Indonesia, Australia, if it escalates, it's not great for Sri Lanka. I mean,
right, then let's, Dr. Vidanage, with your permission, I'm going to open the floor for questions from our audience this evening. So you have Dr. Harinder Vidanage, you have Dr. Harsha De Silva, as well as Ambassador M. Zuhail. So let's go with the first question. Identify yourself.
Good evening. My name is Lakdev Unambua. I'm a law student currently studying for my bar exam. My question.
Who do you want to pose the question to?
Dr. De Silva.
Dr. De Silva. Okay, there you go.
Dr. De Silva, this regards what we were talking about, mercantilism, and in the fallback of the TPP. So, Sri Lanka, we export rubber, garments, and many other products to the US. Now, with the President Donald Trump's proposed tariff of up to 45%, that would mean that firstly, several of the companies American companies that are in Sri Lanka and Sri Lankan companies that produce goods, for example, garment factories for American companies, then they would reduce their presence in Sri Lanka or leave Sri Lanka. So then what would the government do in order to protect the Sri Lankan economy from such a relapse? And secondly, Doctor...
let's go with the first question first, and then, yes, Dr. De Silva.
You know, what he said is, it can be 5, 15, 45%. And 45% is, I think, a highly exaggerated number. But if you look at what Foxconn announced today, that is the people who make the iPhones, said that they are going to build a $7 billion factory to produce screens for iPhones in the US, right? And this is a Taiwan-based company. So you kind of see some movement already. Whether the United States will impose a heavy tax on countries like Sri Lanka, I doubt it very much. I don't think that will happen. Even if he is going to go that route, he will do it with China and perhaps Mexico. But I don't think as a sort of a blanket rule, he's going to put a 45 or 25 tax at the borders to the United States. But if that happens, if some sort of duties are imposed on our exports to the US, that just means we have to become more competitive on the one hand, and on the other hand, we need to diversify our market. And in that context, getting back into Europe is a great positive, getting GSP Plus back, because that European market will then become a sort of a balancing force for the markets that we may lose in the US. But this is speculation at this point.
We have another question from the gentleman behind me. Can we have a mic? Yes, yes, let's go with you. Yeah.
The question I have...
you have to identify yourself.
Yeah, sorry. I'm Shakti De Silva. I'm an undergraduate from the University of Colombo. The question that I would like to pose is both to Dr. Vidanage as well as the ambassador. Now, Dr. Vidanage mentioned a very interesting point on international law and international norms, in the sense that the global governance is shifting. Now, with this shift, the ambassador also mentioned that Trump tends to pander to a domestic audience, the domestic necessities which are felt, especially in the context of the economy. Now, what I would like to ask both Dr. Vidanage as well as the ambassador is that if this global governance shifts, and in the context of China becoming the second strongest economy, probably eventually the first, are we going to see a global governance shift from the United States of America to China, and is that signified by maybe the TPP shifting to the RCEP, or how exactly will this global governance shift, and what exactly are the implications to it to South Asia?
Shakti, with your permission, I'm going to direct that question to Ambassador Zuhail. Yes, Ambassador.
Yeah, you see, the whole scenario is going to change. If Donald Trump's all statements had been going to be formulated as a policy and implemented, whole world scenario is going to change. Because you see, earlier, for last 30, 40 years, the world economy was led by the open market economy. You see, that was started by America, led by America, and the whole world almost whole world fell into it. Now, reading the policies as it is, then it's going to be shrinking towards America. American policy is going to be inward looking, domestic policies, not so much as competitive open market policies. Very strange thing is going to happen if it happens. Then what happens is all other countries are going to be independent single countries. They are going to have bilateral treatment and not this global scenario. It's going to be a major shift and major issue going to be. Now, coming back to other things like TPP, if America withdraws, is going to withdraw, I think, then China might hop in there. Then take the other countries like Australia, New Zealand also might join that group, and there's going to be a new scenario. You see? I don't know. I got the. You got the answer correct? I don't know.
Okay, so let's. Yes, there you go. Right behind me.
My name is Jonathan Benedict. I am an academic lawyer and I market insurance as well. My question is directed to Dr. Harsha De Silva. Historically, Sri Lanka has always had a clear policy on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and I believe we still do. Given Trump's unwavering and committed approach to standing with Israel, is there a shift in the way Sri Lanka will view the conflict, and if so, what is it?
No, Sri Lanka has a firm two-state solution stance, and that will stay. Whether America wants to, be more pro-Israeli, take the more pro-Israeli position, really is not very material to us because our position is clear and we stand by that position.
Okay, then we go in for a short commercial break. When we come back, we are discussing foreign policy. Do we have one? All this and more after the short commercial break. Stay connected. Stay with Face the Nation. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. We are in conversation with three eminent personalities, Dr. Harsha De Silva, Ambassador M. Zuhail, as well as Dr. Harinder Vidanage. Let's start off the third round with Ambassador Zuhail. Zuhail, the Ambassador of Kuwait, formally. Do we have a foreign policy? We're talking about foreign policies elsewhere. Does Sri Lanka have a foreign policy? The time starts now.
Right. Well, foreign policy, we have been for a long time followed the non-aligned policy. We were non-aligned. We were very strong followers. We were leaders of non-aligned policy. Later, I suppose we have shifted a little bit towards left or right or whatever. But the character had been maintained as almost center. Our foreign policy, of course, as it is in the future, with Donald Trump coming and so on, there can be a little bit of shift on this. Our foreign policy, I mean, any country, foreign policy has to be based on its domestic interest. Our interest first, and then base our foreign policy based on our national interest. Of course, we have to have our foreign policy in the geographical context and also regional context and so on, because we are part of this subcontinent.
Ambassador, many say that Sri Lanka's foreign policy is not clear. There is no direction. Do you agree or disagree?
We are little fluid in that area, frankly. We should revisit our foreign policy. We should do a little more research into foreign policy formulation and then formulate our own foreign policies.
Do you see an improvement in foreign policy subsequent to the election of President Maithripala Sirisena?
Well, very difficult to say that there's an improvement or change. I think we have loosened a little, I would say. I mean, we are not stuck to the old policy of center thing. We are generally, Minister might be able to explain that more.
But Ambassador, we had many enemies prior to the 8th of January polls in 2015. And now we have some friends in the West. Good news, isn't it?
In a way it's good. But we made enemies, or rather...
You say in a way good. What do you mean by that?
I'll explain that. At that time we were facing a big war, and we had to stick to certain strong position in order to finish the war. That antagonized the West, unfortunately. Some of the Western countries were not favorable, not very comfortable with the government at that time. So therefore the government took a very strong position and then held on to finish the war. That's finished, right? After the war, of course, the Western world did not interfere so much. Of course, as you said, after the 8th of January 2015, the new government opened out towards the West a little more.
Ambassador Zuhail, are you trying to say that subsequent to the 2009 war victory, the West did not interfere in Sri Lankan affairs?
They
did.
I mean, they did. They brought all these resolution in Geneva and
it was President Maithripala Sirisena's government which was able to salvage somewhat dignity.
Somewhat cooled down. In fact, I think we are going on the right direction of getting some support from the Western countries to get out of the human rights issues and so on. The good news is that
we've
now...
not got out of the human rights issue.
Not yet. It's still hanging on. It's still there. Good news is that right now, Donald Trump is not going to get involved in the human rights issues of any country. That is what is a clear message from him. You mind your business, we are going to mind our business kind of thing. He is more inward looking, not so much of in human rights and so on. But again, the human rights issue will go on for a while. We can't just say everything will just fall in line because there is an institution, there are agencies working on it.
I've always had this question. Why is it that the US is so concerned about the human rights violations in other countries? Let's take a look at Libya for an example. You had Muammar Gaddafi being killed in broad daylight. Let's take a look at Iraq for an example. Let's take a look at Afghanistan for an example. Entire civilizations wiped out.
Yeah,
and why not talk about these as human rights violations? Why not?
This had been the policy of the American government for up to Trump's election. They were interested in regime changing, dominating the world. They wanted the world to fall in line with their thinking. That's why they got rid of Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi and indirectly got involved in this Syrian war. Of course, now the emphasis is shifting, I should say, after Trump. Russia is now coming into the center stage. They brokered the peace initiative with Syria with the support of Iran and Turkey. So Russia is going to move into that thing, whereas if America is going to cool down with regard to interfering with other countries, Russia might play a greater role in that area. Because Russia has a major interest in that, because Syria and Arab countries are in the belly of Russia, so they had to be very careful.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Zuhail, former ambassador to Kuwait in Sri Lankan, former ambassador to Sri Lanka in Kuwait. I now move my attention to Dr. Harsha De Silva, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Dr. De Silva, Ambassador Zuhail is of the view that your government's foreign policy is fluid. The time starts now.
I mean, it's based on friendship with all, enmity towards none. I mean, that is what we've been practicing from day we had a role to play with the rest of the world. Sri Lanka, if you go back centuries, was a friend with so many countries. We traded. You go back way back to Parakram Bahu's time, 12th century. We had friends in China and in the Arab world, and and also we fought wars. We tried to invade Myanmar because they put trade sanctions, and and you come back to the modern times. we've been friends with everyone. Mrs. Bandaranaike, was the founders of the non-aligned movement, and we've had ups and downs, and of course, during the last maybe a decade or so, we had issues with the West, as well known. We fought with America, we fought with Europe, we fought with India, and we got very close to China. But that has changed again. Now we are friends with China, but we are also friends with America, we are friends with the West, and India. And today, as a matter of fact, the senior management of the Millennium Challenge Corporation came to see me. They met a couple other ministers also to convey the good news and to start discussing the big project that we will undertake with the Americans. It is the largest grant that this country has ever received. I mean, we are talking in the multiple hundreds of millions grant, and that grant is given by the American taxpayer to Sri Lanka based on good governance and economic freedom to fight poverty and drive growth. And at the same time, we are having investors coming from China and India and Japan. We just got GSP Plus approved in the European Commission. It goes to the European Parliament. We see no difficulty in getting that
Dr. Silva, you said that we've got FDIs or investments from China. You say we've got investments from India. Tell me the investments that we've received from the West.
West is, let's take America for example, right? So we've been working with the American administration. But American administration can't bring money like the Chinese administration can bring money. There are companies, and those companies.
What are the companies that are invested in Sri Lanka?
Those companies, American companies will make decisions, right?
What are the American companies?
Whether it is Boeing, for example, right? I'm just taking an example, right?
I was just about to ask, is Boeing going to invest in Sri Lanka?
No, I'm saying, right? Or a small company, or take I think some gloves production company or something like that. There are all kinds of small companies that are setting up software companies. There are joint venture companies. But the American administration can't bring U.S. investors to Sri Lanka. They must come. So that is why what the American administration can do is to give, I don't know, there's $300, $400, $500, $600 million to get the economy moving. I mean, that is what the American government can do, and they're doing that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harsha De Silva. I am not going to ask Dr. De Silva today about any assembly plant, tire manufacturing companies coming to Sri Lanka. It's all going to be based on foreign policy, and Dr. De Silva has been extremely vocal of the conduct of the present regime, even after the 8th of January polls. Thank you very much, Dr. De Silva, for joining us this evening. It's very hard to get members of the government for some weird reason to come to the show, Dr. De Silva. Why is that?
You can ridicule, it's very easy to point fingers, it's very easy to criticize, it's very difficult to be me. Right? You come and, get in my
Dr.
shoes.
Silva, with all
listen.
respect,
This country thinks that just because they criticize, things can happen. But doing is very difficult. Criticizing is very easy, right? And to do the right thing and follow the path that you have set for yourself is not easy, right? So sometimes I am, rather disappointed because people like to laugh, to make fun, throw something at you, send something on Facebook, but try doing it. I didn't leave the private sector and come here and become an opposition politician to just be laughed at. I don't need to be in politics, honestly. right? I'm doing it because I think that unless professionals come and change, what's been happening for a long time, then we can all laugh and, perish. That's not. This country must support. This country must support, right? If you think somebody is doing the right thing, support that person, right? I say what I think is right. I do what I believe is correct. I'm not trying to hoodwink anybody. I just wanted to tell you that because of the sarcastic laugh that I got from you and a couple of others.
Dr. Silva, you were in fact a nationalist MP the first time you entered Parliament. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Silva?
Yes, yes.
And the second time you entered Parliament with the people's vote.
Yes.
And you have done well.
Yes.
You've done extremely well as a politician, and now you are the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Many thought that you will get a portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Development or Ministry of Finance. However, that did not happen. You don't have to answer that question, by the way. Now I move my attention to Dr. Harinder Vidanage, Director of the BCIS, Bandaranaike Center for International Studies. Dr. Vidanage, in 2008, when I interviewed Robert Blake as the ambassador of the United States in Sri Lanka, he said there won't be a change in foreign policy when the election was between Barack Obama and his Republican contender. He said there won't be any change in foreign policy because it's a bipartisan policy that is in play. 2012, when the election was happening again in the United States of America, the presidential poll, Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. I spoke to Ambassador Robert Blake again as the Assistant Secretary of State for Central and South Asian Affairs. He said, no change again, bipartisan policy. 2016, here we are. Donald J. Trump. Will there be a change in foreign policy?
Are you asking whether towards the region or
towards the region and Sri Lanka in the future?
Well, it's if it's Sri Lanka, I mean, whatever I feel, whatever the foreign policy projection the new administration will have, it will be basically about how they view the two big powers in the subcontinent, mainly dealing with India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, also Afghanistan. So, and whatever the strategic interests at play there. Because I think what didn't change from Bush through Obama to Trump is that they all have identified the significant, vital significance of India being a close friend or potential. India is still not a US ally, but to have India as a US ally. So whatever policy that is planned out towards India, especially US-India relations, probably will have a major impact on how US views Sri Lanka. Independently, it may. I mean, I'm talking in a more of a strategic security sense, because I don't think Sri Lanka's economic interests, to be very honest, is of interest to the United States. But Sri Lanka has always been of interest to big powers, major great powers, middle range powers, because of its location, and it's of course with the rise of Asia Pacific as a key commercial security strategic region per se, that most countries are now looking at Sri Lanka, and that's where I think that's how.
You said that US-India relations are going to get hampered in the near future.
No, I didn't say that.
What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say it won't change.
It won't change.
It won't change, because I don't think the US can afford to have problematic relations with India.
But they're willing to do that with China. They're willing to do that with China.
Well, yes, they are there because there is, again, I don't know whether that's going to be pragmatic, starting any kind of a trade war or kind of any kind of hostility towards China. But I'm also concerned, listening to the earlier hearings of the Secretary of State nominated Tillerson about his views about China and the South China Sea. So I feel there will be some problematic relations between US and China, but I don't know how far they can sustain it. I don't think it's at anybody's best interest to have a tension with China, and it will put India at a very difficult situation as well. Of course, India and China have a rivalry, but there is significant intertwinement between India and China as well. And for the region, everybody in the region will be very worried if you have serious US-China discord or tensions. So that's why I said, and that's one thing. But US consistently, irrespective of the presidency, has feared China. There is a concern about China's role in global politics, and if you were listening to Xi Jinping's Davos keynote address, you would be quite, it's very clear he actually challenged. He said he sounded more like an American president rather than a Chinese president. So coming back to your question, yes, the way the US frames its relationships with India may have a major impact on how they
Sri Lanka need not worry.
Worry as, when you say worry, that's a loaded,
Sri Lanka need not worry when it comes to human rights?
Well, the UN system is still at play. The HRC is not dissolved, so we have to go through the process. The only thing is there has been significant bargaining, significant role played by especially US in kind of the way the HRC functions. For example, they have consequently kept Saudi Arabia out of it. So that kind of a role they may reduce on that. So Sri Lanka may have hopefully will have a more of an independent voice. In dealing with the Human Rights Council in the future.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harinder Vidanage, Director of BCIS. That's right. In March, Sri Lanka is going to be coming under the spotlight again. Dr. Harsha De Silva, yes?
Can I make a statement? Because I think this whole human rights thing has been spoken about, and the ambassador said, getting out of the human rights issues. It is not about getting out of it. There are two things. One is, we need to clear that we had a professional military and that they did not commit en masse some of the crimes that were alleged. And that is one, right? And we should be able to clear their name. Other side of that same coin is justice to the people whose human rights were violated, right? And that also must be one. So that is what we are trying to do. So when you say human rights, it is about making sure that rights of people who live in this country, Sinhala, Muslim, Tamil, must be protected, and that this government came to office on that promise. And there is no reason to try and say, we are now, not going to do what we said we are going to do, right? We are strengthening the rights frameworks. We are strengthening democracy.
How does that happen?
It is what we have done. For instance, what we've done with the National Human Rights Action Plan, ensuring that women have equal rights as much as men in many fields, whether it is and about children's rights, right, and issues in terms of disabled people, issues of economic rights, of social rights, of political rights, making sure that journalists are not murdered on the Attadiya road, making sure that your recording studio is not Claymore mine.
Dr. De Silva, why wasn't
those are rights.
this discussed?
Those are rights that we promise the people we will give, and in that journey we are making progress. We've made amendments to the Constitution, and on the 3rd of February you will have the right to information. This is strengthening democracy, and we stand by it. However much anyone tries to put us in some box or the other is no concern.
Dr. De Silva, then why wasn't this discussed or impressed upon prior to 2015 September? Why was a co-sponsored resolution came to being? Why did Sri Lanka go and sign a document? If we have all these mechanisms in play, you say that Sri Lanka is serious about a human rights action plan? Okay.
No. That is something else. That is about is about truth, right? That is about finding the truth. What happened? I have, and we have, seen mothers, both in the south, in the north, in the east and west, mothers who lost their children. They want to know what happened. Some are dead, some are missing. They want to come to closure, and finding the truth, right? Bringing religious people, finding what happened. And we've said we instituted an office for the missing persons. That's one. Second is some sort of justice, based on a domestic mechanism. Right?
How will a human rights action plan?
Third one is reparations if it need be for those people who are affected. And finally, non-recurrence. And that is about ensuring that we have a constitution that serves everybody, that everybody in this country are equal. What is the problem with that? Tell me.
Understood. How come a human rights action plan, where is this position now? Human rights action plan and the Right to Information Act. How would that give closure? How would that give the truth?
No, that is about closure and giving truth. It is the Truth Commission, right? It is about finding out what happened. And that is what people want. Now, for instance, I'll give you an example, right? People want to claim pensions, for example, of a person who is no longer walking about. Is that person dead? Has that person gone missing? Now, if you go to the government agency that he's supposed to get the pension from, the government agency says, well, if he's dead, give me the death certificate. If he's not, ask him to come and sign this piece of paper. So what do? You tell me.
What do you do? I want
exactly
to know, yes.
My point. What do you do?
What do you do?
There's nothing you can do, as it was until the other day, until we set up the office for the missing persons. And when the office of the missing person can issue a certificate of missing. And that our government is going to take as a document that is sufficient to get the pension. So these are practical problems that people face.
How many people are missing, Dr. De Silva?
I don't know, there are many, thousands.
So the government is willing to give all these 1,000 or 2,000 or even 3,000 families with their pension?
No, I just took an example of why you would need a certificate of a missing person certificate so you can deal with these practical problems.
Thank you very much, Dr. De Silva. Let's open the floor for questions from our journalists. Let's start off with Sonali.
Thanks, Shyam. This question is directed at Ms. Zuhair. Sri Lanka post-conflict is now actively engaged in transitional justice, reconciliation, national unity. Obama, before he ran for president, famously said of the Iraq war that he wasn't against all wars, just a dumb war. During the Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, he spoke of the necessity of war in some instances, speaking about the concept of a just war. Given the advent of global terrorism across the world, how do you think the incumbent presidency of the United States of America would grapple with global terrorism?
Well, he has made very clear statements, but ISIS. Global terrorism, I think he has focused only to that so far. that I suppose as it is also being controlled to some extent, or at least their operation is being curtailed after the agreement with Russia, Turkey and Iran. Of course, IS is still there, so some of these countries will have to eradicate them totally. But I don't know how much Trump had said that I will get into it, I will finish with them. Now he has a friend also in Putin. Putin is there on the other side. So there is opportunity for both of them to get together. All other regional countries also get together and wipe that out. With that thing, the most of the terrorist situation will go off, I think, in that region at least. Of course, another point is, after Trump, he is not going to be getting involved with any of these countries as it is announced. He is not going to go into Iraq, he is not going to go into Afghanistan and so on. We have to wait and see how he is going to implement all this. American policy is going to be, there's a major shift going to come in, or the foreign policy with regards to all this. There is no more regime changing as it was done by Obama and Bush and so on. No more interference on other countries to control human rights issues and so on, to enforce that. Say that you do this and you don't do this. That's why I think what I said earlier was, Minister's answer, I was talking about interference from other countries, our human rights. Our human rights must be addressed by us, and we should find solution for our own issues, as Minister very carefully said.
How do you, Nadim, 1 second.
Yeah.
How do you view the increase in the racism and the xenophobic sentiment that we've seen, not just in the United States and the Western world, but across the board?
You see, there is nationalism coming up all over the world now. Brexit is one of those. American this time white supremacy. This was white supremacy vote for Donald Trump. So its nationalism is coming up in most of these countries.
What of the marginalization of the people?
Yeah, that's an issue. That is going to be an issue. There is no one-word answer for that. We don't know. It's going to be an issue, you see. So that is what, as Minister said, each of the, our country is equal people. Everybody equal before the law. So if you can enforce that in our country, then it can be a very good thing. There are difficulties in doing those. If you take even other countries, like India or other countries, a similar situation comes up. America, I don't know how they are going to solve this problem. Is he going to start this issue? I don't know. Is he going to have these Hispanics and Muslims as minorities and harass them or what? I don't know. We have to wait and see. Of course, what he had been saying with regard especially about Muslims before the elections, all his website statements had been wiped out the day after the election. It was election platform he was talking. But of course, he didn't miss that point in the inaugural speech also. He said Muslim terrorism, Islamic terrorism. There is nothing called Islam and terrorism. There is nothing, it's another matter. He has mentioned that. But that is, I don't know how much they are going to implement or what.
Dr. De Silva, quick question to you, Dr. De Silva. Now, we know that China has multi-billion dollar projects happening here in the country. India too is investing with the 5 southern states. Now, a particular project carried out by the USAID was the highlight of the first week of January, a project called the SDGAP, or Strengthening Democratic Governance and Accountability, with a company called Development Alternatives Incorporated. Some said that it was a front company of the CIA as well. Is this an attempt by the USA, with India and China already in the country, is this an attempt by the USA to put their finger in the pie as well?
Not at all. This is part of the USAID's Strengthening Democracy program. They are working with Parliament and Development Alternatives or something like that. Is what they called implementing company or something like that. They call for tenders and they pick people who can go and implement these things. So it's absolutely and completely a misleading story that one of the newspapers carried. The speaker clarified it, and we are going to go ahead with their program. That will create an independent budget office, improve the proceedings in the consultative committees and so on.
Is it a coincidence, Doctor, then that wherever this DAI, Development Alternatives Incorporated, had consultation programs carried out, there seems to be a bit of a war situation coming right after? Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, all that is in this region they have worked for, there had been a war right after. So is this a coincidence?
These somebody asked me that they did a study and found that the number of bars and number of churches both increased at the same time in states, in some selected states in the US. They asked the question, is there a connection? As churches increase, do bars also increase? So this is spurious. There is no basis for these kinds of allegations to be made.
Dr. Vidanage, I remember the last time that you were on the program, we spoke about values, the importance of values in dealing with, when it comes to international relations as well, and that maybe there is a dearth of a foundation in a system of core values in the study of international relations and diplomacy as a discipline. This government, the Sri Lankan government, has committed itself to bring about more sustainability, to achieving the sustainable development goals, and also to promoting gender rights, the rights of women in particular. There are moves that have been made already to increase the representation of women in public bodies like local government, maybe in the future in parliament as well. You now have, as the leader of the free world, a person who is not necessarily on the same railway track, let's say. How does this affect our dealings? How does the lack of the support of a powerful nation like the USA affect our own commitment to achieving these goals and to ensuring those rights?
Well, I think the silver lining there is that what you can see is already the resolve in people globally towards, and the kind of, I'm not particularly referring to the protests that broke out with the women's marches, but the solidarity the rest of the world has shown, and the resolve they have shown that, certain idea, it doesn't matter if you are the leader of the so-called free world, but if you don't have values that kind of, that are very critical for the foundation of civilized societies, and to have the idea of rights based societies, irrespective of what the idea of rights are, I think, but the idea that human freedom, the rights of people irrespective of their gender, sexual orientation, religion, I think in a way it has strengthened the resolve of people, for me, I take it in a way, in a positive manner, because you see you haven't seen many women's marches at this level in the recent past. There have been a lot of other protest movements, but this itself shows that the world is, not ready to accept every term Donald Trump, lays down, and it is a good example for Sri Lanka as well, and it's where small powers like Sri Lanka can show their own mettle, show their own kind of, we are a very value driven society. Of course, sometimes you can argue about our values and the way they kind of sometimes contradict with certain Western values, but still we are a value driven society, and I don't think it should undermine any of our values, and I think we should be more resilient, and we should respond to the way the world is responding to any such anti-value material.
So let's open the floor for questions from our audience today. Let's start off. Yes.
I'm Nilantan. I work in warfare and security research. My question's for Dr. Vidanage. Dr. Vidanage, the international perception of Trump's foreign policy seems to be split into two streams. One side seems to feel that it's too isolationist, it could be too inward look and all that, but another side seems to feel that he might be too aggressive, too belligerent, unsophisticated. He was recently criticized for antagonizing China over the Taiwan phone call. But are these categorizations really fair? Because if you look at it in one sense, his foreign policy is far more inclusive, broad than anything we've seen from the American establishment in, 60, 70 years. His proposed friendship with Russia, for example. No American president in the last, let's say, 70 years could afford to say, hey guys, let's try to stop this pointless rivalry with with Russia, sorry. As the ambassador pointed out, the Americans are now likely to be far less inclined to go in for regime change and interfering under the garb of human rights and all that. So is it really fair to categorize his foreign policy as either potentially isolationist or belligerent, when really from a global security point of view, this is perhaps the best foreign policy we've seen coming from an American president in a long, long time?
It's a tough one. Yes, it's very different. There are fundamental differences from most administrations in the last 40, 50 years. I wouldn't share your optimism, but I agree on certain things that the US does not need to have Russia as an enemy. But the problem is larger than that. You know, this is geopolitical interest at play. So when you can't make decisions on impulses. And I don't agree with you that Trump has a great foreign policy, because he has not even revealed his foreign policy. I mean, even Hillary Clinton this time didn't reveal her foreign policy when they were kind of running for, when the competition was going on. So we really don't know. But Trump has clearly said about reaching out to countries like Russia. But at the same time, he's undermining countries like China and of course the US's role in global stability. He's saying we should build 350 naval vessels for the US, which means there is going to be a larger security projection which Donald Trump wants to do. I don't know for what. To what ends, and so it's what I'm trying to say here is, at the end, the biggest worry US would have when it comes to dealing with the countries is ambivalent allies. The US doesn't have firm weather friends anymore. I don't see any firm weather, all weather friends anymore. So what US has is to deal with ambivalent allies. So is kind of extreme views helpful to deal with ambivalent allies? That's a challenge, right? So that's something Donald Trump has to sort out. So I think we are short of time. So yeah.
Yes, the lady.
Yeah.
Right.
Good evening. I'm Koshila Gordon. I'm currently taking attorneys at law examinations. And if the time permits, I have a comment to make.
Yes,
and
please
a
go
question
ahead.
as
Very briefly.
My comment and the question both goes to Dr. Harsha De Silva. My comment is, when we are going to make our human rights law, if there's any changes, I believe about women's rights, it should be the right position. I mean, the right position should be given to women, not the equal position, I guess, because some hard things cannot be done by women. There are things that can be done by women and that cannot be done by women. And if we are talking about equal rights, there will be some problems. I think it should be the right position that should be given to women, not the equal position.
And your question?
Yeah, my question is, Dr. Harshi, it's about the ETCA. Now, I believe Sri Lanka has a really good software a sector which makes really good software productions. And for example, if we take the Millennium IT, MIT, it is the company that have the control. It controls the London Stock Exchange and about 50% of European Stock Exchange as well. And having such a good and a firm software, people who are really good in software in Sri Lanka, why are we going to India? Why are we going to take people from India? What is the current position of ITCA?
Why do we need software engineers from India when Sri Lankans can do the job?
Yeah, I have a comment on your comment if you don't mind. So what you're saying is,
Dr. Silva, mind you, you have to go home and there's a wife and a daughter waiting for you at home, right? Okay, you can start now.
I don't know. My daughter would not have made that comment, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of awkward for me to be told that women don't aspire to have the same rights as men, and if that is what you said, that surprises me.
The software.
Actually, what I meant was not really that the equal position. It should.
You don't want equal position as men?
It's not really the equal position. I guess it should be the right position.
What do you mean right position? You think women must be below men's position?
Not really. Now let's see. Now one of the arguments that the men are making now is, now if women are going to ask for equal rights, a pregnant woman should be standing. I mean, should go standing in the bus. Because we are asking for equal rights. So that has been sort of the.
That's a weird example. I mean, what I'm asking is, generally, don't you want to have the same rights as, suppose, if you had a brother, your brother, or if you have a husband, your husband, or you have a boyfriend, your boyfriend? Shouldn't you have the same rights? Do you feel that men should have more rights than women? If that's the case, you tell me. I mean, we can abandon the battle.
That was Koshila's opinion about women's rights. And let's talk about EDCA. Let's talk about getting down software engineers from India.
Yeah.
When we have brains in the country.
Yeah, this is misplaced. I mean, yes, of course we have some fantastic software companies, and I might want to just mention companies like CodeGen, who we've been working with the last 1 year to create this smart cloud-based classroom, creating products and exporting around the world. Certainly we do. No one had said that we are less able than Indian software companies. Did we say that at all? Or are you just thinking that that is the reason why we want to go to India? Not at all. The Slash.com, the exporters of software, in fact, had a meeting with me and several others, and they said, look, we have come to $1 billion in the last 10-15 years. We want to go to $5 billion in the next 5 years. And therefore, we need certain types of people to collaborate with. And therefore, let us be able to work with those people in India. And those people can work with people here in Sri Lanka. But having said that, there is a perception that EDCA is about opening the doors for all kinds of people from India to come to Sri Lanka and open up shop and work. In fact, I've heard people say barbers will go out of business because Indian barbers will come and start cutting hair of Sri Lankan men, whoever has still got hair left. But, oh, not you, sorry. But that is complete nonsense. Because, this service trade has 4 modes: Mode 1, Mode 2, Mode 3, and Mode 4. Mode 4 is a natural transfer of people, meaning that an individual can go from one jurisdiction to another jurisdiction and offer those services in that second jurisdiction in equal terms with the people who are already living in that jurisdiction. But Sri Lanka is not open to that. We are not negotiating professional people from India coming to Sri Lanka and providing those services in Sri Lanka.
Kaushal, I presume you got the answer? Right, okay. The gentleman right behind you.
I'm GM Lahiru Chamra. I'm a student at BCIS. My question is to Mr. Ambassador. The President of the United States, Mr. Trump, said to the CIA that we have no choice but to get rid of radical Islamic terrorism. And if I could recall that Mr. Trump, when he was campaigning, he criticized Mr. Obama, President Obama, that he was not mentioning the word radical Islamic terrorism. So, if the new administration is going all-out war on radical Islamic terrorism, how will it affect with the allies, the allies of the United States in the Middle East, who are supposedly funding these kinds of terrorist organizations? Mostly accused is Saudi Arabia. I would like to know your...
Yeah. I have heard of that funding part also, but I am told it's not the government of Saudi Arabia or not the government of any other countries, some individual for their own benefit. They benefit by these kind of things, you see. Terrorism has to be eradicated by Trump for anybody. That has to be done. ISIS must go out of the face, on the face of the earth. That's fine. But whether Russia does it or America does it or Saudi Arabia does it is immaterial. Who should do? That should go. I don't think, well, he had been saying this. You see, you have to understand, Trump is a businessman who has come to politics for the first time. He had never been a governor, he had never been a congressman, he had never been a senator. He had come from outside the whole system. So he's sort of learning a lot of things now. He will, CIA and KGIG, what you call, all these people will advise him, I'm sure. So all these policies are being, talks are being done, but then again I'm sure the formulation of policy will come out very soon. So I am sure that all these countries will support. All these countries want it.
We have another question from Kavinder to Dr. Harsha De Silva.
Good evening. My name is Kavinder Ratnapala. I'm a graduate student of international relations. My question is to you, Dr. De Silva, but if any other people on the panel want to comment, please feel free. There's an old adage that one campaigns in poetry and you govern in prose. But the Trump victory has kind of altered this into a new action, which is to campaign in populism and to govern in plutocracy. Plutocracy, as his cabinet to be, is supposed to be the richest cabinet ever assembled, with 5 billionaires. My question is, what can the liberal world, or people who advocate for liberal values, learn from this unprecedented victory? And could you explain the steps political and civil society groups can take to counter these tendencies while staying true to liberal values the world over, and especially in Sri Lanka?
Well, they asked, I think, outgoing Vice President what Joe Biden, what Trump's administration was going to be like. He said, I got no freaking idea, right? So, I mean, we can all sit here and sort of say this might happen, that might happen, and assume that it is good or bad. But we don't really know, to be honest with you, how this whole thing is going to actually be implemented on the ground. Now let's take, for instance, I also saw that 5 billionaires in his cabinet. Now, some guys, or most guys are from Wall Street, right? And they don't understand anything about those people in the Rust Belt who voted for Trump, right? They got no freaking idea who these guys are, right? So where they are going to, start to understand, to deal with these issues, I don't know, right? And for instance, let's take some of the oil executives who come on board. For instance, people have been talking about the pipeline, what is it called from Canada? Keystone pipeline, right? Keystone pipeline. For years, people have been fighting, saying, look, don't do this, it will ruin the environment. And Obama went through so much trouble to stop a big infrastructure project because he was fighting for climate change. But overnight, these people are saying, look, we don't care. We are going to make sure that this pipeline is built, right? So the priorities are not aligned, and I don't know how they are going to get aligned. I don't know if the cabinet of Trump would ever understand the priorities of the people who voted for Trump. So I think in there somewhere lies the answer.
Dr. Vidanage, do you want to add something to that? I'll give you 20 seconds if that's the case.
No, I think his question was the lessons for liberals.
Yeah.
Right? So my answer is it's because the liberals screwed up. They're at this situation. So that's something that the political elite should know. Right? That I think that's. I mean, I could go on for hours on this, but I think that's the lesson. Obama created the largest war program, kill capture program, the most mass surveillance of U.S. citizens ever in history. So that's all under liberals. So I think liberals. This is a liberals.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vidanage. Dr. Harsha Silva again on the spotlight. Yes.
Hi, my name is Rushita Rodrigo, and I'm a law apprentice. I make my question short because we're out of time. So, in light of the question raised by one of our members of the audience about ETCA.
Rushita.
Yeah, Rushita.
Am I right? Got it?
Yeah. Question raised by Koshila.
Okay.
ETCA is not only about movement of natural persons from India to Sri Lanka, but also Sri Lanka's movement to India. It's the same with any other free trade agreement. So why not, I'll make my question short, why can't the government be more transparent about all these agreements so that the public doesn't have wrong perceptions about these agreements? Like
you see, when many of the previous governments signed agreements, the public knew nothing, right? You must give credit where credit is due. This time, even in the negotiating team, members of these professional organizations who actually struck and protested at the Vihara Mahadevi Park are included, right? So people even from chambers like COIL are included in the negotiating team. So this is fairly open. The Minister for International Trade has had a number of discussions with different stakeholders. And I think this is the most transparent a government negotiation on a trade agreement has ever been.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and the audience, for joining us this evening. We have one final round to go. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round. This is Face the Nation. Stay connected. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. Let's start off our final round with Dr. Harinder Vidanage, Director, Bandaranaike Center for International Studies. 4 years from now, what's going to happen next? You want me to be more precise?
Well, yeah, astrology is not my profession or my strength, but well, if it goes like as it has started, it might be a very different world. If it goes like as it started, as the minister said, Joe Biden said no freaking idea, and he said, will it last? He said that as well. So We don't know, but I mean, if you look back at global history, you know, these moments have emerged before as well, and it has changed the world in a certain way. And always the world needs changing as well. 1933 is a classic example. I'm not trying to. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bring the analogy of Adolf Hitler with Trump. That's wrong. But the time, the what we call the interwar period had similar, global, transformations of mass nationalism, economic crisis, hatred, xenophobia, racism. So we are living in similar times. One of my favorite philosophers, Lao Zizek, said a couple of years ago, this was the end of times. So we are living in a world which might go in for a reset, but more than the world, the question would be, after 4 years, where would the US be? That would be the major question. Where is the US going to be? It was at the epicenter of global affairs. Will it be after 4 years? Because the way China and the rest of the world is looking at the world, I mean, I don't think they agree with most positions that the current president is trying to put forward. And I don't think they want to be in a mercantilist-led America, right? Because free trade had made everybody prosperous, and that's what Xi Jinping said at Davos. Globalization is good, free trade is good. So I don't think in 4 years that will go away. I don't think the US has the power, the ability, or even Trump can't make that. Trump is not God. Trump is just another democratically elected populist politician, right? Either he has to reset, recalibrate, or the world will do it for him.
That's very much, Dr. Harinder Vidanage, Director of BCIS. Ambassador M. Zuhail, 4 years from now, my question to you is very simple. Will it last? Will he be the President of the United States 4 years down the line, or what's going to happen?
Well, assume that he will be the President because he is elected, he is in office now, he has already taken oath. Well, if he implements all what he had been talking about, it's going to be entirely different world order, new world order. America will lose its importance in other countries, in the rest of the world, in military and political influence. They will be concentrating more on economic activities, more localized activities. If that happens, I don't know what they are going to do with their fifth fleet and the 6th and the 7th fleet placed all over, you see. And the NATO, he himself is talking about withdrawing from NATO or reduce NATO's their influence on NATO or their contribution to NATO. Because something like 73% contribution go to NATO from United States of America. Out of the 28 countries, they are contributing so much and all other countries are not contributing anything, or small amounts. NATO was set up at the time of USSR, big challenge, and then Europe was not so rich at that time. Now Europe is also very rich, as good as America. Europe has 400 million population, USA has 300 million population. USA contributes about 25% of the world GDP, Europe also somewhere similar amounts. So Europe is also a rich country, rich continent. So what his point is, why should we be contributing so much for NATO to protect you people? You also contribute. If you don't contribute, in fact there is no need for a NATO as the need was at that time. Russia is much weaker country than USSR at that time. So it was to counter USSR, the NATO had to be set up and it became very strong. So if the influence of NATO or the scale of NATO operation reduces, and then it can be a different world order. In fact, Russia might become a more influential country, and then there will be a different country, different world we might see if this policy continues. That's the main thing.
Thank you very much, Mr. M. Zuhail, former ambassador to Sri Lanka in Kuwait. Dr. Harsha De Silva, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Optimistic? Pessimistic? Will he make it to the finishing line?
I don't know. But let me relate a story that happened in Laos recently I was acting minister and I attended on behalf of Sri Lanka, John Kerry, the foreign ministers of ASEAN plus Russia, India, Japan, Canada, Australia, America, all seated around and going at each other. And I had never seen anything like that. And the officials were at the back. I turned around and I said, well, this is scary. It was, because the North Korean foreign minister was threatening South Korea. South Korean foreign minister was pleading, saying the North Koreans are going to annihilate him. The American Secretary of State was telling the Chinese foreign minister, soon after the South China Sea matter this was, that he should stick to the global norms and rules-based behavior. Whereas the Chinese foreign minister was telling the American foreign minister to stick to his brief. And it was chaotic. And the Russians kept quiet completely, and the Indians kept quiet. Now, this I saw for the first time, and I was worried, right? So there must be some sort of balance, right? So if America moves out, somebody is going to move it. The question is who? Because there is going to be a multipolar world from the unipolar world. That's happening already. Who will take control of our region? Right? I think that is what matters to us the most. Right? There must be a counterbalance. Without a counterbalance, things can go haywire. But in my view, if this goes on for the next 4 years, Americans will be poorer than they are today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harsha De Silva, but I need to ask you this question.
Oh, no.
In 1988, Oprah Winfrey asked Donald J. Trump, would you contest for the presidency? My question to you is, in a few years from now, would you be contesting for the presidency of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka? You better ask this question, Dr. Harsha De Silva, because in the event you do contest and if you win, I should be able to say very handsomely, Dr. De Silva first said this on Face the Nation.
So we'll ask these people.
I'm not going to ask them, I'm going to ask you. Would you be contesting?
Madness, what nonsense. I was never even going to run for member of parliament.
Dr. De Silva, you just disappointed me.
I said I was never even planning on running for member of parliament.
However, you might in the future.
Who knows?
Thank you very much, Dr. Harsha De Silva, for joining us this evening on the show. Thank you very much, Dr. Harinder Vidanage, Director of the Bandaranaike Center for International Studies, for joining us. Mr. M. Zuhail, a former ambassador to Sri Lanka in Kuwait. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us this evening on the show for the very first time. Thank you very much, the audience, for joining us this evening on the show as well. Thank you very much, Nadim. Thank you very much, Sonali. And thank you very much, Chaturanga, for joining us this evening. The latest news says Trump has signed the executive order pulling the U.S. out of the TPP. As Dr. Harsha De Silva said, who is going to fill the vacuum now? How is it going to affect Sri Lanka in the near future? I leave you tonight with a quote by late Thomas Jefferson, former U.S. President. He said, "One man with courage is a majority." Is that man Donald J. Trump? We'll have to wait and see. Take care and good night.